Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Doomcast this week. We're doing another all-time must-read here. A couple weeks ago, I was with Dan Bublitz Jr. and Jeremy Plum of Panel Picks podcast, and this week I'm with a friend and one of my favorite comics, Myq Kaplan, and we are going to talk his all-time must-read comic book run. So for those that may not be familiar, I think the majority of my audience are comic geeks and comedy geeks, so they are probably going to know you. But for the few that don't, Myq Kaplan, what do you do?
Thank you for asking. Thank you for having me. One thing I do is read a lot of comic books, but larger than that, I do other things. I read non-comic books. I'm a stand-up comedian. I've been doing comedy for more than 20 years. I travel the country and the world. I make albums and specials. I also love playing music and my girlfriend. That is, I love my girlfriend. I don't love playing my girlfriend. Though if I were hired to play her in a theatrical production, I think I know her pretty well. So I think I could
You
get
could
into
pull
the
it
part.
off.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I'm a comedian. I'm a human, and I'm your friend who likes reading. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for doing this. I certainly appreciate it.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I'll add one more thing. I realized just last year I created with a friend of mine, Ramin Nazer, who's an amazing comedian and artist. We collaborated on a book that is, I would say, more like a comic book than a non-comic book because every page is a joke of mine or an idea of mine illustrated by Ramin, kind of, New Yorker style, but much more colorful and psychedelic and maybe not more philosophical, but love the New Yorker. But this is me and Ramin. Our book is called Heartbrain Art Train. So not only do I read books and comic books, I also do the other thing.
well, that is. Let me see here. I think I've found this also. Is this? Let's see here. Is this what we're talking? Yeah, this is exactly what we're talking about.
That's
Heartbrain Art Train.
100% further down on the page. There might even be, a few examples of
Yeah.
panels from that very book that I'm referencing. So yeah, that one. Yep, that's the very first comic in the book. It's a lady holding a baby who is saying "New life, who dis."
I, I love it. Oh, this is great. And Ramin is great. Ramin's collabed with you on uh, let's see the broccoli and ice cream, which is your
Yes,
podcast.
he has made
The
the
cover for that.
logo for that podcast. For my other podcast, The Faucet, he's done at least one or two. He's done several album covers for some of my stand-up albums and posters. And yeah, he's just delightful. Oh yeah, that one is bowling alleys should have a hologram of a tiny Indiana Jones running in front of every ball. And that's just a joke if I say it, but he really made it look like that.
And it looks fantastic. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, well, thank you for pulling that up.
Yeah, this is something I'm getting a little bit better at doing on the fly here. But so let's see here. So the meat and the potatoes, or the non-meat and the potatoes, because neither of us are meat eaters. We are not carnivores at all. So just the potatoes, which are delicious in really any form of what we're doing today. What is in it like I mentioned, and like I mentioned to Dan and Jeremy, it does not have to be your absolute favorite comic of all time, but just one run that you
Yeah.
think is an all-time must read.
Absolutely. It's a difficult to narrow down. I'll tell you, here's some runner-ups include the All of Fables by Bill Willingham.
Oh man.
So I don't even know if, I could pick just one run on it because it's like 20, maybe 22 volumes. And it's just, I love the story from beginning to end. It's just beautiful and funny and heartbreaking and just, really great, just wonderful art and story. But That's not the one I'm picking. For now, I will pick. Since I read it a couple years ago, a little late to the game on Tom King, but his run on Batman is just one of the most beautiful human set of stories. And he also did probably about, I don't know, 13 to 15 trades full of them. So if I had to zoom in even further, I would say the in the middle there's like a book or two that's a story of Batman and Catwoman being engaged to be married, and there's these wonderful stories with Superman. Oh yeah, that's
Oh yeah.
100%. Yeah, so it starts off, I think it's like I forget if it's I Am Batman or I Am Gotham. Uh,
Oh
and
yeah.
then I Am Suicide. And then there's one in the middle that's Bride or Burglar. And Rules of Engagement, I think, is the name of one where Batman and Catwoman are engaged. And it's not just a clever title. But just there's one story in the middle of this run where it's just like Superman and Lois are having a conversation, and Batman and Selina are having a conversation, or Bruce and Catwoman, and Clark and Lois's superhero name. And each of the guys are like big upping the other guy. Like Superman's like, oh, man, that guy, Batman, he's just the coolest. Like everybody wants to be him. Like, I mean, I've got these powers, but like I didn't do anything. Like he's in amazing shape. And anyway, and then Batman is saying to Catwoman, he's like, man, that guy, he's just so powerful. Oh yeah, they like go to the that's where
Dress
they're
up as each
dressed
other.
as each other. Yeah, to go out for like, I forget if it's Halloween or just a costume party or whatever. They go to like a state fair. It's just like, I mean, there's incredible superhuman stories, but also just super stories that are super human. Like I feel like he really humanizes even this, this most powerful of aliens and the most, sort of almost inhuman level of human that Batman has become, but makes them both makes all of these characters like deep and rich and like realistic in a way that comic books I mean, historically, I feel like people weren't coming to Batman and Superman for the realism, but like
No.
there's the fantastical nature of, of the stories and challenges that they face, but also I feel like, yeah, I was a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer when
Yeah.
it was on and in the years after. And I mean, one of the things that it did was it was like, this high school girl is fighting literal monsters, and there was always a metaphor going on for the internal monsters and external monsters that we all might face in our lives. And so I feel like there's something like that going on with superhero comics. There's something that we can tap into about our fears and our hopes and our dreams, that we're not looking to Superman and Batman for being literally like, how do I solve my problems? Well, he can lift a building, but that there's more to it metaphorically. But I feel like in these Tom King stories, there's also just like resonant human things that are like, oh yeah, like that's an emotion that I feel. It's not just way out there stuff that could never be, but it's stuff that's like, it's just super meaningful and touching.
Yeah, I absolutely love this run also. Uh I've uh King's got a special place in my heart as a modern writer for a lot of reasons. Um and I know that uh I'm surprised that this run is particularly polarizing, but I've
Hmm.
noticed people are also polarized on Chip Zdarsky's current run as well, who I also think is an
I
excellent
love.
writer.
Yeah, I'm very different, but that's fascinating. I'll be curious to see what, like, there's sometimes I understand that different people have different tastes and you might come to a character or a book with different expectations, but like I mean, Tom King to me is just such an amazing art, a storytelling artist, a crafts person that, like, if somebody said to me like, Mike, what would you do if you were writing Batman, I feel like I'd be worried about screwing it up and like making him say something that Batman wouldn't say or doing something that Batman wouldn't do. And I feel like King has this real talent, this real quality to he has this capacity for creating new stories, like where things happen that didn't happen before,
Yeah.
but that also remain like completely grounded in like the entire ethos of what Batman and Superman and all these heroes and characters like have ever been. Like he understands what makes them them in like a timeless way, and also somehow like it's sort of like the way like a Simpsons episode for the most part, at the end of it, everything's the same and you don't have to watch any of them in any particular order. There's like very, very few things change. And somehow I feel like his run has that as well. Like they, but the characters go through all of these things. They don't end up exactly where they were at the beginning, but also like not that nothing changes, but it's just, I feel like to me, I'm like, who could not read this and come away from it being like, wow, that was like, you nailed it. That is Batman. That is like what goes on in his, in his head and experience and in the lives of these characters. Like, there's one other, I think, a story in there where Bruce Wayne is on a jury uh, to determine the guilt or innocence of Mr. Freeze, who he as Batman like caught, and
Right.
it's beautiful. It reminded me of there's a TV show called Picket Fences that was on in the 90s that
Oh yeah.
was a David E. Kelly show that was fantastic. It won a lot of
Yeah,
Emmys,
Tom
and
Skerritt was on
yeah,
that, right?
Tom
Yeah.
Skerritt was one of the main actors who, in this one particular episode, he is the sheriff of the town, and he is on a jury. And there's like video of a particular, crime happening, and yet there are these philosophical questions of whether I think a person had, police came into somebody's house and he killed them in what potentially was self-defense because of all of the mitigating factors. And so now this police officer, this sheriff of a town, is in the position on the jury of potentially arguing that this person who killed police officers was maybe in the right. And so I feel like, this story of Batman, of Bruce Wayne being on a jury, essentially, Mr. Freeze is technically is on trial, but ultimately, like Bruce Wayne is putting Batman on trial in this story
Yeah.
in a way that is like meaningful and important and also like resonant with like, I feel like not like aspirational in a way that, you look at Superman and you're like, oh man, what a hero. Wouldn't it be great if that were real? If a hero like that existed. In this story, I'm like, wouldn't it be great if a hero like this person existed, but not Batman, but the integrity of this, not the superhero crime fighter, but the integrity of this human being who wants to like make sure that there are some mental, checks and balances on uh
Right.
on his power.
Yeah. Like just to be willing to be introspective and question your own motivations and then do so kind of from your alter ego. Um, there's so many great moments in this run that I absolutely loved. Um, and I know we mentioned I mentioned earlier, I was like, it doesn't have to be one that I have am familiar with. Whatever you pitch, we'll talk about it. But this is great because this is one of my favorites. And I'm one of my single favorite characters to come out of this run is Gotham Girl,
Mhm.
and the whole arc that they have. There's one particular issue. I think it's the Gotham Girl Year One, where it just goes poetically through her her existence pre Gotham Girl, and what she goes through, losing her brother and then becoming the person that she is and struggling with her own motivations and her own power as well, and that you get kind of echoes of that reverberate through the rest of his run with Michael Janine, who I presume that I'm pronouncing correctly, because I've never actually heard it pronounced. Um, but yeah, I absolutely love her arc, and what you get from King out of that.
Oh
I also
yeah.
I also love Kite Man.
Yeah, I was gonna say the story that was called The War of Jokes and Riddles, like,
Yeah.
that Kite Man plays sort of an integral part in, and just I mean, I think another, sort of testament to King's writerly capacities is that, like, the Joker and the Riddler, these are characters who've been around for so long, and there have been so many stories told about them, and I feel that he's able to do something, again, new, a combination of new and iconic, like refreshing and like not doing something that is out of character. There's another just interlude here. I think it's One Bad Day. Is that like there's a series of comics
Yeah.
that have come out with different, different Batman characters and such. And like, and King also wrote the Riddler's version of that, in which the
Yes.
Riddler does, like, take a darker turn than we are standardly used to, in the realm of this, uh, that the world of that story. But I just love, I don't know. I have the Riddler has a really, it's not, maybe it's not a great riddle why I particularly resonate with the Riddler, but it's just really, I mean, I love puzzles, I love riddles, I love mysteries, I love games. And so in that story, The War of Jokes and Riddles, it's just, man, it feels like drinking a fine wine of comic books. Like, it feels like literature. It feels like,
Yeah.
deep and rich and powerful.
And I think that also, um, because I always try and be fair to people who tell me that they dislike uh, some of Tom King's more mainstream books,
Hmm.
um, specifically as Batman run, that think that I try and give grace to folks who disagree with me on that, because I see it as literary as well, and I appreciate that a lot. And I see a lot of people who uh, will say, "Well, that's fine. I don't want my comics to feel like literature. They want it to be, um, I suppose they want it to be uh, strictly pulpy, but this also is. Um, and it can be escape. Literature can be an escape, but it can also appeal to, our higher selves, or ask us, questions for us to consider about our own motivations, because the whole run is, kind of King dissecting Batman uh, psychologically in his own way, which other writers have done and played around with. Um, but that's intriguing to me, and I like it being very literary as well. Um, and speaking of this run and King's work on this, I'm not sure if you're familiar or if you're aware. He's been, and I might have just concluded because I'm a little behind, been writing a Batman and Joker story in
Hmm.
the Brave and the Bold, with Mitch Gerrard's, or
I did.
Gerard's
I did not
also.
know.
Um, it's great. So whenever you are able to pick it up, perhaps in trade, if they just anthologize it and release it as a single trade, because it's a good chunk of the issues that they've, when they have put it in Brave and the Bold, um, it's been fantastic, and really good. And he kind of does the same thing with the Joker in this case that he did with the Riddler in One Bad Day, um, and the Joker's very terrifying in this.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's highest possible recommendation for it. Um, but yeah, this is really start to finish one of my favorite runs of Batman in modern history. I mean, like, you know, I like I like some of the older, um, maybe even more like silly '90s era. I think that's kind of when I came into comics was the whole Nightfall, um, and
Mm,
then kind of my rediscovery of Batman was the Jim Lee, Jeff Loeb, Hush storyline. Um,
cool.
but I mean, this takes the cake for me as well. On more recent Batman runs, I love it. Uh, I love it so much. So it's a great pick, and I really do recommend everybody pick it up if they can and trade now. Um, yeah.
I'm I agree with you agreeing with me.
I'm a sucker for pretty much anything Tom King, though. I I don't know if I recall when we were talking comics a month or two ago. Did you say that you had read Danger Street?
I don't remember if at that point I had read it, but I have read the first trade of it at this point. Yes.
Yeah, it's also it's great because it still has that King flavor, and you can tell that it kind of it kind of takes place in an Elseworlds, I suppose. Um,
It's one of the it's like the Black Label, right? I feel like
yeah,
that's their new like kind of what if, or
yeah,
Elseworldsy
anything
deal.
goes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty I remember when I like first read DC versus Vampires when I was getting really into James
Oh man,
Tynion.
yeah,
Like to start reading a story that seems like it takes place in the regular DC universe. Um, and then, beloved characters that you don't expect to die, and you're like, "Oh, is this gonna" I'm like, "Oh, I guess it's just a story." It's a story that takes place in some world similar to the world of the comics where these characters live on forever, but it's, like, really, a little jarring and potentially disturbing, but, like, it makes it exciting to not know for sure that, like, Batman is going to live or
yeah.
such.
Or not be. I mean, there's characters that you very early on, like you mentioned, get turned into vampires that you would think, oh well, they could never get turned into a vampire.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
but all the rules are off the table. I mean, somebody gets turned into a smoothie literally early on, and it just it's
Yes.
that's also another great book to read. Tynan and Rosenberg both are favorites, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Just,
man,
briefly unrelated to most of this other than one specific thing, do you read Mark I know it's spelled Millar, I don't know if it's pronounced Millar or Miller.
oh yeah,
Um, I just read a book of his called Big Game, which is like
ooh,
a crossover of like 7 or 8 or like a bunch of different of his stories, like Kick-Ass and Hit Girl and The Magic
yeah,
Order and The Chrononauts and like just and Huck and
Huck is great.
yeah, and it's basically there's like a supervillain who is coming after all of them and and there's because there is I guess I don't want to spoil too much, but I was like reading this and I'm like, oh, does this change everything in this world forever? Um, because
Wow.
I didn't even know all these characters existed in like the same. I was like, I thought they were all separate beings in different stories, but yep, even like the magic ones, the science ones, it's a fun read.
Man, I'm gonna have to pick that up because I will pick up with his I say Miller. With Miller's stuff, um, it's not always quite a hit, guaranteed hit for me, but I will always pick up a first issue, dip my toe in, and just see, do I like where this is going, and then I'll if I like to, I'll keep picking it up. Huck and Chrononauts were both a lot of fun for me. I love that.
Yeah, the thing that I like that he does is I feel like so many characters, I never thought about this. Here's a weird analogy. Like it's similar to in a way, similar to how I like Parks and Rec and The Good Place or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like these, shows that are created, I think, by some of the same people,
Yeah,
where they all have these characters. Each character is very strong, like as like, oh, that's them. They have these tastes and uh and attributes. But like Raymond Holt, played by Andre Brower on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, they're like, he's this almost robotic character, like, by the book, like rules strict. But then every once in a while, like they do something that's completely counter to it, where they'll be like, oh, he has a person that he thinks of as his nemesis, and he's very irrational about it. And uh
Yes.
and I feel like in Miller's work, like every character is like the best at what they do, is like, a Wolverine type of sorts. They're like, this person is the smartest. Well, this person can kill anybody. This person. And so he has all these like unstoppable forces and immovable objects that then like they ultimately, when they come at each other, there are like, oh, like, would Thor defeat Superman or vice versa? Well, it's like, well, who's writing it and what's the story? Like, obviously anything could go any way. Like, I remember there was like a thing between like Peter David and Eric Larson where one of them had made uh Doc Ock had adamantium arms that could then go head to head with the Hulk. But then I think it was Peter David did that and was like, yeah, this guy could be a pretty, Hulk level villain. And then I think when Eric Larson had them in the same comic, he just had the Hulk's finger, knock the guy. Like, he's still a human. He has a human head.
Right.
And so, like, obviously there's no one objective universal reality even to any of these, like long standing characters. It's all about what the author, what the storytellers are doing with them. And so it's pretty fun. And so in this one big game Miller comic, like, to see there's, so many badasses, like some of them getting their bad asses handed to them by other badder or baddest asses. Um,
All of the asses.
anyway, which is including Nemesis, which is a Miller story that I
Oh
like a
yeah.
lot. Which is, he's sort of like the, to segue us back to where we started, like, what if Batman was evil, essentially?
Yeah.
Uh, and and so yeah, and so I'm glad that the non-evil Batman exists, and I felt like I was very well taken care of in the hands of Tom King. Last name very appropriate.
Yeah. I love him. I love what he does. Him and Mitch Gerrits. I read a lot of their collabs as well. I got turned on to him through his Mr. Miracle
Mm-hmm.
in 2017, which was I mean, it opens up very jarringly, but it's really heartfelt and wonderful. It's all around a great book, and I love
It's
everything he does.
beautiful. Have you read his the Supergirl?
Yes.
Maybe it's Woman of Tomorrow, maybe.
Yeah.
Whatever. That just such a, yeah, like, to take a character, like, I didn't have, I saw the Supergirl movie when I was a child in the 80s, and I otherwise have not like read or followed much about, like, I'm like, I know the basics of her, origin and but I had no like preconceived notions about her personality, for example. And
Right.
then to see King like just create a whole, inner and outer landscape of this, this badass.
And that the central part of the story just reinforces that the beautiful part of the super person mythos to me, which is the power isn't having the power to do anything. The power is compassion, is limitless compassion and even at points where it's very difficult to have that. And that, I mean, that's the whole upshot of that story, where it's just like this, you get to a point where you can take revenge on behalf of a lot of people,
Mhm.
and and on behalf of yourself who've also been wronged, and you make the choice to do the compassionate thing, which is impressive. And that's a great story and uplifting, and that's one of the things that I love about DC in a big way.
Yeah,
um
just briefly on sort of piggybacking on that, I feel like there's an analogy that can be drawn, like, not Todd Glass is one of my favorite comedians,
oh
and
yeah.
and he is not the only person to have said this in this way, but I remember him saying, like, with regard to like freedom of speech, he's like, yes, of course you can say anything that you want to say, but what do you want to say? I feel like that's the same question as like you have, for a Supergirl or a Superman, somebody with, you know, essentially limitless power, like you have the power to do anything. So what is it that you choose to do?
Yeah. And that's the whole defining choice right there for the character. And I think in a way for writers, like you said earlier, there's no objective reality in this or in comic books. And I think that's my feeling with Tom King, and every version of Batman. Every Batman's valid, right?
Mhm.
There's the Batman Brave and the Bold, the animated series Bruce Timm Batman, your film versions of Batman, your Adam West Batman. All of those have something very specific that they speak to, and they're still all Batman. And there's Tom King's Batman run, I think, speaks particularly to me and to you. And hey, if it doesn't speak to you, yeah, I guess don't worry, the creative team will change within 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
That's if people are upset with Zdarsky and Jimenez. I love it also.
Oh,
I don't know if
it's
you're
so
keeping
much
up with that,
fun.
but
Yeah, I read them as the trades come out.
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I am about 6 issues behind, so I will probably be right on top of that with you. And maybe if we do this again at some other point in the future, maybe we'll be talking about that. But for now, I think anybody who has not read Tom King's run and wants to read some very excellent literary comics, go check it out. And also check out Myq Kaplan. Myq, where can people find you?
Thanks for asking. Many places. Just if you spell my name the way that I spell it, Myqkaplan, search for that where you'd find your comedy albums, streaming or downloading. You can find a special of mine on Amazon called Small, Dork, and Handsome. We showed you the book, Heartbrain Art Train. That's at my website and at raminnazer.com. I have a new special on drybarcomedy.com that you can put in the code Myq Kaplan, and you'll get a free month of that. And you can follow me on social media at Myq Kaplan on your favorite place or places. And I have a newsletter that I send out weekly-ish, if not more. And you can subscribe for more at myqkaplan.substack.com. Some for free and some extras. But yeah, if you just search for me, you will find me.
I did just search for you, and I saw the the dry bar special. Is this the most recent? Because boy, do
Uh,
you look clean cut
ha.
comparatively.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so that is a photo that was taken when I filmed it in late 2021. So about a year and a half ago ish. And I am also I had that face still exists under all of this hair. But yeah, that's great question. Thank you for showing it. Yes, I have many. I contain multitudes of
That's
faces.
yeah, yeah. As do we all.
Mhm.
As you're fond of saying, we're all one in a way, but in every way also. Uh, but again, I appreciate you for doing this. Thanks for coming on and
Yeah,
and talking to me. And hopefully next time you're through the Des Moines or Iowa area, I'll certainly see you again.
I
But
hope
for now,
so.
yeah, thanks everybody for watching and checking this out. Uh, we'll talk to you again soon, and we'll
Thank
see you.
you.
Peace.